Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the MarketSite studio, we have Fausto Pugliese, President of Cyber Trading University. We're going to discuss how to identify breakouts using BookViewer, powered by Nasdaq TotalView. It is great to see you as always. And Fausto, one of the reasons I love learning how you use BookViewer is you don't even have to know what these companies do, because you're just identifying levels. And there's a couple in here that we're going to go over today that may be interesting ticker symbols, but not quite sure what they do. Let's start with one of the more popular ones that's been traded, Billy.
Billy, yeah. So one thing that's great about the BookViewer is that a lot of people don't take advantage of these big breakouts. And sometimes they see these things, they see these resistance levels. And one of the big things we try to teach, Jill, is that when you can't have a resistance level unless you have a big seller out there. So when we're looking at the stock BILI, you could see that on a very basic chart, the stock was trading roughly these last couple of days. We had a big run up from 1940, and you could see right from the bottom in less than 15 minutes came to a really big resistance level just right below $21. And when you look at the BookViewer right there on the right, you could see that there was basically a 100,000 share seller. What's nice about the BookViewer is that you'll see orders everywhere, 100 shares, 500 shares, 300. And then when you see a big, huge iceberg order, which is a big dominant amount of shares, you can see how the stock hit that 100,000 share seller and came from 21 down to 20.
And then you can see right here where it pushes over that iceberg order, and it continues to move higher, and that's exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly, and what's nice about this is what you're going to see that bar chart is a minute chart, so it consistently was hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. So some people want to know, how do these stocks break out? Like if there's a big order out there, well, obviously there's a buyer out there really thought it was a good deal and wanted to buy it. And you could see it there that buyer got executed, and having such a substantial, seller out there, the stock broke out from 21 all the way up to 21.60.
Yeah, and then it looks like it topped over here at 21.90 on the next.
Yes, now this is what they call like a double top. Now what happened here is the stock tested a new seller out there, and there was another sell that showed up around 21.90. That's what's nice about understanding about using the BookViewer, is that it gives you those points of supports and resistance levels, because you can't have a support and resistance level without those buyers and sellers.
Right. And
you could see that there was a resistance level there, which is basically a seller, at that 21.90, hit it, came back down to hit it.
Yeah, and if we go to your next slide here, you can actually see it exactly. It was right in between that 21 and that 22 level.
Right, and what happens here is that when you hit a support level, which was the previous resistance level, that resistance level becomes a new support level. And then it went back to that 21.80 and boom, just broke out at 22.50.
Yeah, let's take a look at Hello Group next. Not entirely sure what they do, but I do love their ticker symbol is MOMO, MOMO, which is great when we're talking about momentum stocks.
Right, so we don't really care what these companies do. Jill, we just want to kind of make money and just have a game plan. What's nice about the more inexpensive stocks, you'll see more of a dominating orders here. And you could see here on Momo, you had a big monster seller, 300,000 shares and 500,000 shares, hovering between 830 and 836, which we will all know would be a big resistance because having a big seller out there.
Right, and we can see that, again, breaking over those key iceberg levels that you've identified.
Right, so now the question is, how do we know the stock's going to break it? Now we added what's called a time and sales, which is another window a lot of people neglect. A lot of these platforms offer it. And you can see there's a lot of greens there. So when you look at your time and sales, usually defaulted, red means transactions going on the bid, greens are going on the offer. Well, that big seller got executed, and you can see on the bottom there's a big volume spike right there. And from there, that stock just literally within 20 minutes went from 840 all the way to 920.
Yeah, we could see that in the next chart that you have here as well. I mean, it is so specific to those levels.
And you could see once we break through that level, it's going to go to the next resistance level, which is the next biggest seller. And the next biggest seller right there was 326,000 shares at 1920. Obviously, the person there wasn't as interested in buying as much as he wanted to buy it right around 840, and that's why it's having a really tough time breaking that resistance levels at 920.
Before we get to the last one, Affirm, are these due to a piece of news coming out or something fundamentally that happened with the stock, or can it be really predicated on what you're seeing with volume and different technical levels that traders have identified, or a combination of the two?
That's a great question, Jill, and it's a little bit of everything. So sometimes we'll see a stock like this, like, is there any news on it? We'll go through it, and there's not. It's just somebody could also just decided, hey, someone want to purchase a big block stock of it. But usually the stocks that we kind of look at are always in the big percentage gainers, and they are obviously moving due to news. And then there's this thing that happens which is called program trading. and that's where these program orders start coming in, and that's usually what you're seeing right here is these big orders that were out there due to program trading.
All right, let's wrap up with your last one here, Affirm, ticker AFRM.
Very popular stock. So here's a stock that took a little bit of a hit this past week, and you could see that there was a lot of orders out there. And what was nice about this one, shares and orders are different. You're looking at a 51,000 share amount of shares out there, but it wasn't like the 500 we saw earlier, but this made up over 270 different orders around the world. So it's not just one order of 51,000, it's 270. What's nice about this is that there was a lot of people out there buying it, and you could see how the stock was trending down. It started all the way up, up into over to 13 and started hovering right around there. Now, there's this other thing people want to learn, which is called, bull flags and bear flags. You probably hear of those. So that's a lot of consolidation going on. So what happened, the stock was consolidating here, and it was testing this big buyer out here at that support level, which you could see.
Right, at $12. Yeah.
Right, and then what ended up happening, like another breakout, not just on a breakout on an up, but we had a crash going down. Stock came up to it, tested it, boom, stock, those orders got filled, and there you have a stock usually breaking all the way back down to new lows.
Right.
That's why it's important to follow these orders on the BookViewer.
Right. Well, let's take a look at your last slide here, actually, because you could see where 1150. That's where support was, and then your new resistance level is at 12.
Because then all of a sudden it tested another buyer, which is 100,000 shares. So Jill, like it or not, your listeners have to understand. What makes a support and resistance level, if you break it, it's going to test the next biggest buyer out there. And there was no buyers in between. So when you're looking down that BookViewer, you'll see like, well, there's 100 shares, 500, 3, and then you're going all the way down. Like, well, if we broke that big buyer, where's the next biggest one? And there you have it. You had over 100,000 share buyers sitting there, right around there, around 1140, and that's why I was having a tough time. But you got to remember, when you break the previous support level, that support level becomes the new resistance level.
So then you can use this for shorting ideas as well, in addition to going long. I mean, it works both ways.
It works both ways. You just got to understand, not focus too much on the past, but focusing on the future. And the future is, where's everybody else have their orders out there? And that will give you a better game plan on your entries and exits.
All right. Great content. As always, thank you so much, Fausto, and thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.